Hello and welcome back to Buckle Up. I'm Harry King and this is an Isuzu D-Max. It's a pickup truck, but Isuzu thinks it can tempt you out of your family SUV. Well, let's see if that's the case. So, as always, we'll start at the front. Quite different from what we usually have. Here you have fairly standard pickup proportions. So a large, high, long front bonnet, longitudinally mounted engine, and obviously space underneath for the four-wheel drive system, and lots of ground clearance. Some interesting fang-like stylings on the grille, which is really quite a departure from the previous generation D-Max, which was a perfectly fine vehicle but was rather bland. This has a lot more going on here. So here at the side is where the job of styling a pickup truck becomes slightly more difficult, because sort of the back, well, it has to be a box. So you've got to really focus in on the elements you can, which Isuzu has. Look at these wheels, these are brilliant. 18-inch alloy wheels, great big Dunlop all-terrain tyres, factory fitted from this car. Contrasting mirrors, nice full-sized operational what's it called, running board or side step, and then yes, a bed. That's not something you get on most cars. Okay, so around here at the back, obviously less styling going on, but I do want to draw attention to these lights. I think these are the best looking lights on the vehicle, and things like that do really help elevate a commercial vehicle into something that maybe an ordinary consumer might consider. Otherwise, a lot of the design of the rear of this vehicle is very utility focused. You'll notice the interesting shape of the rear bumper. That's so it can be used as a step to get into the bed. You do not get this in other vehicles. You can't do this. You can't just get into the boot like that. You do have some other classic pickup signatures though. So the name of the brand, large on the rear tailgate, that's quite popular in the pickup world. And there, over there in large, purposeful letters, is both the name of the model and the name of the trim level, which is V-Cross, which is maybe a nice little reference to the Isuzu Very-Cross. Don't know. But this is the top of the range model. It's also the one that Isuzu expect to be the biggest seller, because it's sort of a dual purpose car. It's not just a pickup truck, it's also usable as a family vehicle. It means you get lots of lovely extras. There is also a reversing camera in here, which is quite good. Now, this might seem quite bland to most of the people watching this who maybe haven't been around pickups that much, our British audience, I'm guessing, but check out this. A soft opening tailgate on a pickup truck. Okay, so load bed facts and figures for those who are interested, and I've got the spec sheet out so I don't get this wrong, because this does actually matter to people who use these as commercial vehicles. So in the double cab, which is what this is and what the top two trim levels are only available as, so that's the DL40 and the V-Cross, you'll have 1,495mm bed length and a 1,530mm bed width. Obviously the width goes for every single model. If you get an extended cab, which is available in the DL20, you'll get 1,805mm in bed length, and if you go for the single cab, you'll get 2,315mm of bed length. Weirdly, the single cab pickup truck is actually the longest version of the D-Max you can buy, in overall vehicle length as well, because of that extra long bed. The load bed depth is 49 centimetres. Again, same on every single model. Now, alongside that, you also have your payload. So every single different variant of this truck has a slight variation in payload, depending on your cab size, your trim level, and your transmission. But in this one specifically, it's 1,070 kilograms, because this is the V-Cross double cab auto. In all of them, you have a towing capacity of 750 kilograms unbraked or 3,500 kilograms braked. There's nothing out there in the pickup world that'll tow more than that in this country. The only caveat to that is the two-wheel drive model is limited to 2.5 tons. So if you want towing, you need to get a 4-wheel drive model. And finally, really exciting, gross train weight. So that's your combination of your trailer and your payload in the truck. That's up to 6,000 kilograms. So in this specific model, that means if you have a full 3.5 ton brake trailer, you can only have up to 4,070 kilograms here in the bed, because you can't exceed that 6,000 kilo train weight. And if you haven't worked it out already from all of those interesting numbers, that means that the curb weight of this truck here is 2,030 kilograms, which I'll get onto a bit later. But hopefully I haven't bored the socks off of all of you, and some of you are still watching, even if it is only the ones interested in towing. Let's go and have a look at the inside. So, the back seats. I guess really this is a question of, can you use this vehicle for a family as well as using it for work? And I think immediately the answer is yes. You've got ISOFIX, you've got nice large windows, and there is a decent amount of space in here, especially for children. Now I'm sat behind my seat in the driver's position, which incidentally is all the way back, and I can just about fit. I maybe wouldn't be particularly happy for a long amount of time, but I do fit in here. But I think children will be absolutely fine. It is slightly decontented back here compared to maybe some modern family SUVs though. There is one USB port here in the middle and 2 climate vents with 1 controller, but there's no temperature control. There's a solitary curry hook here that very handily tells you its capacity there. It's a 4 kilogram curry hook, that's a lot of curry. But that's there, so that's handy, but that's more utility really. There's door pockets and there's door bins with a cup holder sized bit for them. There's also this center armrest, again with more cup holders. So not masses going on in these back seats. There's a lot of grab handles. That's good for getting in and out of, There is more going on back here though, and I actually have to get out to show you, because obviously being a pickup truck, this doesn't have all the storage that isn't in the cabin. So for a start, you can lift up this seat base and you've got these little storage spaces down here where you can pop stuff if you don't want it to be on display, and it'll be safe inside the vehicle, locked inside the vehicle, if you don't want to get a tonneau cover or anything. It's a slight faff to snake the buckles back through though, and also you can drop these back seats forwards, and that's where you have things like your tyre iron and your jack and other things like that. But there isn't actually any more storage back here per se. It's just a sort of little cubby hole where you'll find things that you might otherwise find in the boot floor of a normal vehicle. You also have the top tether for child restraints up here. But that's about it for the back seat, so let's see what's going on in the front. Now, here in the front is where you really start to feel the benefit of that V-Cross specification. So overall, the cabin feel in here is really rather nice. Certainly, it'll keep up with sort of your more mainstream rivals in terms of SUVs. You've got a nice large screen, you've got leather on your steering wheel, you've got perforated seats. Everything high up in the cabin is soft touch. There are some harder plastics further down, but this is based on a utility vehicle, ultimately. Toys you get in the cabin, well, you've got radar cruise control and auto steer on a pickup truck, which is frankly marvellous. You've got your usual audio controls, your usual stalks behind the steering wheel, push button start, a large infotainment display with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The actual software on this system isn't that good, but by using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, you can bypass nearly all of it, and it works no bother. That's where the USB is for that. There's also a 12-volt socket down here if you've got any larger accessories you might want to use, which the owner of a pickup truck might be interested in. 2 cup holders here. You also have cup holders up here on the dash that pull out. I think they're brilliant. I love pull-out cup holders, and these really do work. They're not flimsy. There's also bottle holders down in the door pockets. The door pockets are a nice good size as well. They're, again, harder plastic down there. There's also a fairly large center console. You'd keep a decent amount in there. But don't worry, because there's also not 1, but 2 glove boxes. And in this one, there's a DVD player, which is slightly odd. I don't know why there's a DVD player in there, but there is. And it's got Dolby Audio. So that's good. Down here in the centre, you get some other off-roady options. So this selects your four-wheel drive modes, and then you've got hill descent control and a locking rear differential. Obviously, that is your transmission lever. You've got your off for your parking sensors and heated seats. Ooh, more hidden cubby spaces. There's one up here on the dash. It's only shallow, but it's good for your personal effects. And there's another hidden one down here by my knee, which is about the right size for a wallet. If you want to quick draw your wallet for getting in and out of car parks or going through drive-thrus, maybe. Controls in here. I think whoever designed this interior has a phobia of dials, like twistable dials. There is no volume knob anywhere. You just have to endlessly push a button. You're either endlessly pushing this one up and down, or you're endlessly pushing the one on the steering wheel up and down, which if you want to turn it down quickly, or turn it up quickly, is mildly irritating. And everything works on a sort of up-down switch, which I guess is good if you've got gloves on or something like that, as you might do out, at the work site. But all of the aircon dials all work on an up-down switch, temperature, even the direction of the air, whether it's high, mid, or low, all done on an up-down toggle switch, which is a slightly interesting choice, but it's workable. The seats also are nicer than you might expect. So this one is fully electric. Standard sort of 8-way configuration and lumbar support, which is really nice, and there's plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel as well, so it's quite easy to get a good driving position, and obviously you have an incredibly commanding view of the road. Though really, before I talk any more about your view of the road, let's get it on the move. So, driving the Isuzu D-Max. How does it compare to an SUV is probably the simplest place to start. It does not have the same ride quality you'll especially find in a soft roader, because this has a proper utilitarian suspension setup. The front's fairly conventional, but in the back you'll find effectively suspension technology from the Victorian era, leaf springs. There's a damper obviously, but yeah, leaf springs. Which are designed to operate with up to a ton in the bed. So with it unladen, it's a bit jiggly, a bit wobbly, and just not as settled as maybe you'd be used to if you're used to driving an Audi Q7, say. With that being said, the way it holds the road isn't really compromised by that. You don't feel unstable. You don't feel like you're going to be pivoted off the road at any given moment due to bouncy rear suspension. It's just might not be what you're used to. I am quite used to it. It's very similar to the suspension setup in my Ford Explorer, link in the top corner. But yeah, not hugely smooth. The steering is fairly standard for this size of vehicle. There's not a lot of feel at all. There's not a lot of resistance at all. Very light, very easy steering. It's quite a lot of turns lock to lock. It's nearly 4 turns lock to lock on this. So you will be twiddling the wheel quite a lot, but it's a good size. And with the sort of leather covering on it, it's quite easy to use. And just, you can palm it, which is what you want from any kind of vehicle, really, isn't it? Bit of palming. That's what I want. This car's what I want. That might come as a shock to some of you, but I do actually really like pickup trucks, because I am a redneck at heart. Performance is acceptable. We're talking 0 to 60 in more than 10 seconds. It is only a 1.9 diesel engine. It's got decent power figures with 161 horsepower. That's enough to move it along, but it's not going to be winning any races. And certainly in the Ford Ranger you can get up to 210 horsepower, so it really is quite a long way behind that. And I mean, take your pick of performance SUVs. And as you can maybe hear, the engine's also quite noisy at higher revs. You can definitely feel its sort of industrial roots, if you will, the fact that this is an engine for work and not for play. With that being said, the actual vibration from the engine isn't bad at all. You're quite well isolated in this cabin. It's just the noise of the engine, and it's not like a sports car. It's not an enjoyable noise. It's a diesely rattle. Now, any fans of something like a Land Rover will feel right at home with the seating position. You're well up in the air. Your head's at the same height as van drivers and even pedestrians, and you sit pretty upright in the cabin with a good view out everywhere. Other than behind you, the view is impeded somewhat by the fact there's a pickup bed there. So actually, in the rearview mirror, my view is cut off behind me by the end of the bed rather than by the bottom of the rear window, which means there's sort of a low down blind spot behind you, but you do get that in other large SUVs anyway. It's just slightly worse in this. You do have a reversing camera, you do have rear parking sensors, so it's not really a problem. Despite the overall height of this vehicle and the slightly archaic rear suspension setup, roll in the corners is fairly well controlled, and actually you can press surprising speeds on a bendy road. And also, the car is maybe narrower than you'd expect. It's less than 2 meters wide. In a time when a lot of even medium-sized SUVs are growing to the width of 2 meters, suddenly this feels rather threadable on a back road, in a way that I did not expect a near 2-ton pickup truck to be. Technology in the cabin. Well, there's a huge amount of technology actually. This has pretty well everything you could want in a modern vehicle. It has radar cruise control, and it has a steering assist system. So on the motorway, you can just turn those things on and really kind of relax and just let it drive you down the road. And as long as you're paying attention, you'll be fine. It's also got lane keeping assist, and a whole bunch of active safety systems. But slightly amusingly, due to the sort of analog nature of the gauge cluster, every single one of those systems has its own individual light in the gauge cluster that all light up when you start up the car, and it's like looking at what they thought computers were going to be like in the 80s. I've got to say, the feeling of driving this really is brilliant. If you've ever been in a proper big Land Rover or Range Rover or a Jeep even, it's got some of that king of the road feeling to it because you're so high up and you feel really well protected in here. It's a nice big vehicle. It gives you a very reassuring feeling on the road, and you know that it's got all that capability. You feel like you could just keep on going through anything in this. It's really nice. So speaking of capability, the off-road cred in this is pretty impressive. You have 800 millimeters of wading depth, which is a lot. I mean, you wouldn't really want to drive through 800 millimeters of water. It would be quite an unpleasant experience. You have 225 millimeters of ground clearance. That is fixed though, there's no air suspension in this. So if you need more ground clearance than that, you're looking at a proper mechanical lift. You've got an approach angle of 31 degrees, a departure angle of 24 degrees, and a breakover angle of 22 degrees, which is very impressive. Obviously that departure angle is significantly worse than the approach one. That's due to the rear overhang that you have due to this being a pickup. But really, it'll get you most of the places that you want to be going off-road. And it's got proper four-wheel drive, selectable four-wheel drive. So right now I'm in two-wheel drive high. You've got four-wheel drive high and four-wheel drive low. You have a locking rear differential to really keep you going on the rough stuff, and hill descent control. You don't really have any other programmable off-road modes. You just have good old-fashioned mechanical four-wheel drive capability. So not a lot of stuff to go wrong, and really quite a lot of technology to keep you moving when the going gets tough. The 6-speed auto gearbox is not the most refined unit in the world. It has a manual mode, but really the changes just aren't worth it. They're really quite laboured. It takes a while for it to change, and then the ratios are quite far apart as well. The lower three ratios are quite close to give it good traction off-road, and then the 4, 5 and 6 are a bit longer in order to give you decent petrol mileage or fuel mileage, on the motorway, but it means that shifting it manually just isn't a particularly rewarding option. You have similar ratios in the manual itself, though obviously in that you can properly change when you want to, so I suspect it'd be a much better experience than trying to finagle this in a manual mode. If you just let the automatic gearbox do its own thing, it does work perfectly well. It's not a sporty unit, obviously not. It's designed for heavy duty towing and off-roading, but it is completely fit for purpose. When you've got the radar cruise on though, it does sometimes kick it down a gear and then change its mind, so you sometimes have a slightly awkward yo-yoing on the radar cruise as it tries to accelerate. And also the auto steer system, it does work rather well, but it's not particularly set on the dead center of the lane. It will slowly drift you back and forth between the lines if you don't manually take control of the steering every so often, which some people will find irritating, but I think the whole point of those systems is they're an assist, not a do it for you. I feel maybe I've got a bit giddy because I like this car so much, and potentially I like it subjectively rather than objectively, so I'll try and break down some likes and dislikes. Likes, off-road capability is amazing. On motorway cruising, high-speed cruising, surprisingly refined, very easy to drive for long distances. Major dislikes, the engine noise. It's really very rattly and very noisy at lower speeds, more so even than its rivals in the Ford Ranger and the Toyota Hilux. And the fact that there's no knobs on the interior, that I can't understand why you wouldn't have a volume knob. But there you go. I think I've just about said everything I can about the driving experience, so let's go back and do a conclusion. So, the Isuzu D-Max V-Cross, can it do every single thing that your family SUV can do? Yes. Obviously you would have to get a cover for this bed if you need sort of large interior storage space, but otherwise easily. Space for the kids, space for everyone. Is it as nice day to day as an SUV? No. This is a proper off-road vehicle. You can feel that on the drive, but if what you want is a proper off-road vehicle and you need space for the family, and maybe you like outdoor pursuits or whatever else, this has everything you could possibly want, and it's got the benefit of weighing little enough to go normal car speeds on an A road. I think basically I really want this car. I really want this truck, I should say. It's completely won me over. It's utterly charming, and I would take it over a soft roader every day of the week. So all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching, guys. Please remember to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. You can become a channel member, or you can become a Patreon if you'd like to support us so we can do more cool stuff, or you can go to our merch store, link in the description, and buy some cool merch, and you'll stay warm, and you'll also support the channel, which would be fantastic. We also have all of our social media down in the description. You can go follow us in all of those places as well, and that would be great if you would do that. Come on, as a favor, I'll owe you one. Don't worry about it, trust me. We'll sort it out. Just go follow us. It'll be fine. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.